Naren runs with all his might down a hallway with walls painted yellow. He is sweating profusely and has no idea how he ended up stuck in this endless labyrinth. Suddenly, he trips over some very thick cables lying on the floor and follows them until he finds a room full of old cameras and recording equipment. He quickly places a heavy box against the door to jam it, grabs his radio, and calls his team for help, letting them know he got separated from them. He waits for someone to answer, but no one does. Just then, he hears a noise in the next room. He approaches very carefully, fearing the worst, but it turns out to be just a bird that also got trapped. Naren exhales, relaxes a bit, and keeps walking. As he moves through the hallways, he notices that some parts look poorly made, with furniture cut in half and rooms that seem like bizarre copies of the real world. Suddenly, a completely deformed figure emerges right behind him. Naren panics and bolts down the hallways, but the creature is faster, catches up to him, and takes his life. All this time, scientists from the Async company are watching everything happen through screens, but they don't lift a finger to help him. Sometime later, Dr. Mary Klein stands watching machines destroy her childhood home. In her hands, she holds a piece of concrete imprinted with her footprints and her mother's, a keepsake from when she was a little girl. In another part of town, a guy named Clark has his life completely upside down. He is an architect and owns a furniture store, but his wife kicked him out of the house. His business is going bankrupt, and he also has a drinking problem. Clark goes to therapy with Mary and tells her he feels completely alone. To see how stressed he is, Mary suggests a role-play exercise where she pretends to be his wife. Clark gets into it quickly and starts shouting about how he paid all the bills at home. He recalls a night he came home late, accidentally knocked over a glass, and a huge fight broke out. He screamed at his wife that she never appreciated any of his hard work, not even the fact that he paid for her college. After venting all his rage, Clark calms down and leaves the office. The next day, Clark tries to shoot a commercial at his store with the help of his employees, Kat and Bobby. Clark dresses up as a pirate to grab people's attention, but the chair he is sitting on breaks, and he crashes onto the floor. The store is completely empty, and his debts won't leave him alone. Hours later, an electrician arrives to check the place because the lights are flickering and the power bills are insanely expensive. The two of them go down to the basement, open the fuse box, and notice two switches flipped diagonally. They have no wires and clearly aren't part of the original installation. They try to flip them, but nothing happens. That same night, Clark sleeps on a sofa inside the store. He is watching TV when, out of nowhere, the screen goes black, flashes a very strange blue room for a second, and then cuts out completely. Right after that, all the light bulbs in the place start flickering violently and burn out. Clark can't take the pressure anymore, so he grabs his car, drives to his old house, and stays parked outside just staring at it, unable to let go of his past life. The next morning, Mary is at home thinking about her mother's memories and the demolition. Meanwhile, Clark returns to his store's basement, determined to find what is wrong with the power. He flips off all the switches, leaving the basement completely pitch black. Right there, he notices a very thin line on the wall that is glowing and flickering. He approaches, reaches out, and to his surprise, his arm passes right through the wall as if nothing were there. A sudden force pulls him forward, and Clark falls into a yellow hallway filled with the exact same furniture he sells. He gets up quickly and manages to crawl back into the basement, but curiosity gets the better of him, so he steps through the wall again. He starts walking through never-ending hallways, enters empty rooms, and stumbles upon the same dead bird Naren saw years ago. Then he hears a woman speaking French, followed by a man's voice. He follows the noise and finds a cardboard mannequin connected to an old radio broadcasting several languages. Nearby, he spots a small door and a backpack lying on the floor. Inside the backpack are several IDs, and one of them belongs to Naren. Clark crawls through a very narrow tunnel and comes out into a room where shoes and chairs are sunken halfway into the floor, yet the floor is completely solid. Just then, he hears a massive noise, peeks through a hole, and spots a strange figure falling many stories down. Terrified, Clark turns around and runs back toward the glowing wall. He crosses back into his basement, but he brings a wooden stool with him to prove everything he saw was real. At the same time, a guy named Phil is watching everything Clark does through hidden cameras in the yellow hallways. A few hours later, a highly agitated Clark arrives at Mary's office. He explains that he found an infinite space behind his store's wall and draws her a map to show her the labyrinth. Mary listens but doesn't believe a word, telling him he probably imagined it due to a lack of sleep and the drinking. Feeling deeply offended, Clark gets up from his chair and tells her he will return with real proof so she will apologize to him. Fully determined, he goes to look for Kat and Bobby at the store. He tells them to come down to the basement and bring a camera. The two laugh at him, but they listen and go down. When they arrive, Clark walks toward the wall and steps through, vanishing completely. Kat and Bobby freeze, but they end up following him and are left completely jaw-dropped when they see the place. Clark begins guiding them through the hallways while Bobby records everything with the camera. They walk until they reach a very deep, vertical shaft. Clark decides to tie Bobby with a rope so he can go down first with the camera to scout ahead. Bobby reaches the bottom and sees lots of dirty clothes scattered around and pieces of the cardboard mannequin. Suddenly, a light begins to flicker, and Bobby sees the skinny creature walking straight toward him. Panicking, he starts screaming for them to pull him up fast. Clark and Kat pull the rope with all their might, but right when they almost have him at the top, a force yanks Bobby down in one sharp pull. Clark and Kat lose their balance, and all three plunge down the hole. As they fall, they see the creature dragging Bobby away down a dark wall, killing him and leaving nothing but a red smear on the floor. Kat panics and runs after her boyfriend to try and save him. Clark tries to go after her but gets lost among the endless yellow hallways. He runs aimlessly until he reaches a massive room with a lit Christmas tree and two completely still people standing on either side of it. At that exact moment, a deformed woman who moves very strangely comes sprinting toward him. Clark flees until he reaches an area that looks like an empty swimming pool. From there, he can hear Kat's screams in the distance. He drops the camera on the floor to run faster toward her screams, but he can't find her. At that very moment, a hand picks up the camera from the floor, and the video cuts out completely. A few hours later, Mary checks her phone and realizes she has a voicemail from Clark. He sounds highly agitated and lets her know that he finally found the labyrinth, but has absolutely no intention of coming back. Deeply worried about him, Mary heads straight to the furniture store. Meanwhile, in another part of town, the scientist Phil is watching television and happens to catch Clark's commercial where he is dressed as a pirate. Phil recognizes him instantly because he is the exact same person he has been secretly monitoring through the labyrinth's cameras. Mary arrives at the store. The place has been closed for several hours and the door is covered in posted notices. She enters with caution because the lights are flickering and goes straight down to the basement. There, on top of a table, she finds the maps Clark had drawn, and right in front of them, she notices the glowing rift in the wall. Remembering what her patient had told her, she reaches out and ends up stepping through with her entire body. Once on the other side, she notices the furniture is no longer there, confirming that Clark was telling the truth from the beginning. She starts walking through the hallways, calling out his name, crossing through rooms filled with piled-up desks and chairs. Suddenly, she finds a message painted on the wall that says, "Make the magic real," right next to a drawing of a monster attacking people. At that exact moment, Clark appears right behind her, very calm, and softly whispers for her to keep quiet. Mary jumps in fright and asks him where on earth they are. Clark replies that this place is an infinite blend of every space that exists. In the distance, a massive noise echoes, terrifying Mary. Clark tells her to calm down, steps behind her, and without giving her a chance to react, strangles her by the neck until she loses consciousness. While she is passed out, Mary's mind makes her relive the saddest day of her childhood. She remembers the exact moment doctors took her mother away to a psychiatric hospital, leaving her completely alone in her old home. It was an abandonment trauma that scarred her for life. A while later, Mary wakes up and realizes she is tied to a chair. She is in a room Clark arranged with random items to look like a normal dining room. He is serving her food with a very relaxed attitude. Around the table sit other human-like figures that do not move at all. There is a man in a striped shirt, someone sitting in a wheelchair, and the same deformed woman who had chased Clark earlier. Clark begins to explain that the labyrinth traps people and wears them down until it turns them into hollow copies made from their own broken memories. To prove to her that these things feel no pain, he drives a large knife into one of the figures' stomachs and pulls out a material that looks like cotton. He tells her they aren't real people and that they can survive by eating that. Afterward, he opens a refrigerator and shows Mary Kat's head. Clark killed her so he could store it inside. Mary panics completely but tries to stay composed by taking deep breaths. She apologizes for not believing him and promises to help him if he unties her. However, Clark has completely lost his mind and ignores her. He wants to recreate the therapy roleplay exercise. He turns off the room lights, cuts a lock of hair from the still woman, and places it on Mary's head to force her to act like his wife, Barbara. Clark starts screaming, ranting about their financial problems, venting all his rage, and blaming her for ruining his life. Mary reaches her breaking point and confronts him with the truth. She makes it crystal clear that his wife didn't leave him because of his drinking or the lack of money, but because he is incapable of accepting his own mistakes, spends his time complaining about everything, and always blames others for his failures. These words hit Clark incredibly hard. He falls silent for a few seconds and, out of nowhere, unties her. Right at that moment, the woman who was standing still panics and runs off to find an exit. Then, the monster makes its appearance. It is a massive creature, identical to the drawing on the wall, and it is wearing pirate clothes. It is essentially a deformed version of himself born from Clark's traumas. He looks at the creature and tries to calm it down as if it were his friend, politely introducing Mary and telling the monster she is his therapist. The monster ignores him completely, lunges at him, bites his neck with brutal force, and rips off his leg. Clark bleeds out and dies almost instantly. Mary takes advantage of the chaos to run at full speed through the hallways. She crosses a wooden door and reaches an area that looks like an outdoor street, but she realizes she is still trapped. The monster, after finishing off Clark, chases after her relentlessly. Mary runs through a multitude of rooms filled with old furniture and failing lamps. Along the way, she trips over a piece of furniture and hurts her leg, forcing her to keep walking with a limp and in severe pain. She advances as best as she can until she reaches a very deep pit. Having no other way out, she begins scaling the walls by gripping the stone edges, managing to leave the creature at the bottom for a few minutes. When she reaches the top, Mary notices she is in an exact copy of Clark's furniture store, except a few things are out of place. She runs toward the main door to escape to the street, but finds it completely blocked. That is when she understands the labyrinth has claimed her. Suddenly, the pirate monster appears behind her and tackles her. The two crash to the floor as the room activates emergency alarms and begins releasing a white gas from the ceiling that chokes her, draining her strength very quickly. Just as the monster is about to finish her off, Mary pulls out the concrete block with her childhood footprints that she had kept in her bag and bludgeons its head several times to stun it. This attack buys her a few seconds of an advantage to crawl through a very narrow hallway where the giant creature cannot fit. Mary crosses one last door, thinking she has finally escaped that hell, but runs face first into a group of men wearing yellow hazmat suits. The men corner her, spray gas directly into her face, and hold her down until she passes out. Mary is taken to a highly advanced secret scientific facility. There, they take x-rays and run a series of medical checks on her, as she is wheeled on a stretcher through metallic hallways. She catches a glimpse through a window showing that the scientists also captured the creature's body. After examining her, they seat her in an interrogation room. Phil enters the room, tells her his name, and asks her directly how she managed to enter the labyrinth. Mary replies that she simply crossed a wall in the store's basement and asks if he knew Clark, since she found photos of him there. Phil decides to tell her the truth. He explains that his company used to build MRI machines until, by pure accident, they discovered those endless hallways. Since that day, they have dedicated themselves to mapping and studying the place. Phil confesses that he himself got trapped inside some time ago, and that despite researching and using advanced technology for years, nobody really knows how it works. The only thing they know is that more and more entrances are opening up all over the world. Mary stares at him and asks if they are going to let her go home now that she knows the secret. Phil remains silent and gives no answer. In that long silence, Mary's mind begins to disconnect from reality. The painful memories of her destroyed house, her childhood traumas, and her mother's face flood back into her head with immense force. That is when the most chilling part of all this becomes clear, just as Clark had warned her. The labyrinth retains people's memories, learns from them, and creates physical copies of their worst traumas. Slowly, out of nowhere, new rooms begin to form, created solely from Mary's memories. Inside one of these new rooms, replicating the interrogation area, a woman appears sitting down, looking exactly like Mary, but completely deformed and with a hollow stare. It is an emotionless clone created by her own fears, confirming that a part of her will never make it out of there.